Coming up on the show,
getting up close to an American icon in New York.
Now for the piece de resistance, the original torch.
Wow.
Cooking up a Michelin star takeaway in Singapore.
So this is the chef extraordinaire, Hoka Chan.
And I'm on the hunt for London's fast disappearing red phone boxes.
If it's London, it's the telephone, it's the red telephone box.
hello and welcome to the Travel Show with me, Christa Larwood, still here at home in London. But as you can see, some things are starting to return to normal and fingers crossed we'll be back out on the road sometime soon. Until then, this week let's take a look back at some of our favourite trips to the world's most vibrant cities here on the show. Well, New York is always one of our favourite attractions. Maybe it's the sheer noise, bustle and knowledge that under normal circumstances it really does feel like the city that never sleeps. And back in 2019, Lucy was lucky enough to be given a behind-the-scenes look at one of the city's newest and perhaps most iconic attractions.
I was up at 5 a.m. to catch the Star Ferry, the very first boat of the day to leave for Liberty Island, hours before the arrival of the public. Wow, I've never seen the statue this close before. Definitely worth the ungodly wake-up call. Until recently, visitors that wanted to learn more about the statue's history were directed to an exhibit in its base. But the space was so limited, only a few people actually got to see it. That's all set to change with the opening of the new museum. The museum takes people all the way back to the statue's creation. It was designed by Frédéric Auguste Bartholdi, who built it in his Paris workshop. The statue marked 100 years since the Declaration of Independence and the historic alliance between America and France. In 1885, it was shipped in 350 individual pieces over to New York, where it was reassembled and unveiled to the American public the next year.
Now for the piece de resistance, the original torch.
The torch.
The original torch.
Wow.
Stood up there from 1886 to 1984.
The original torch had been changed from Bartholdi's design to include a glass panel flame that could be lit up at night. In the 1980s, it was removed and replaced during a massive restoration of the statue. Talk to me about how difficult it was to get the torch in here.
Well, I didn't have to do it, but it was quite a task.
Yeah.
People worked for about 2 weeks from 3 in the afternoon till 3 at night, and they had this carrier that they laid the face on its back and then put the torch on it. We had not put in all the glass here so that it could lift quite nicely into its position.
Yeah.
And it all worked quite well, and here it is.
Martin and his team have been in charge of conserving the torch and cleaning it up.
Well, today is the last day. It's sort of the clean down from the top down. And so as they're finishing up the lighting fixtures inside, my job is then the final clean down of everything that falls down. You're one of the last people who get to be here before it's off.
I do feel very honoured.
Yeah.
It's so iconic, and and you think about its history and how it stood for freedom and for liberty to people all over the world. It really is a remarkable piece of work.
Lucy getting a close-up look at Lady Liberty back in 2019. Now, for many travellers, one of the benefits of exploring the world is getting the chance to try all sorts of local cuisine. Back in 2016, Henry visited Singapore to meet a man whose street food earned him a Michelin star.
This is Singapore's largest hawker market in the heart of Chinatown, and it's ram-packed with stalls selling traditional dishes. One stall in particular is causing quite a stir.
This queue is absolutely humongous, full of all sorts of people from Singapore, from around the world. There's a lot of tourists here, and you imagine it for some sort of concert, but in fact, it's for that hawker stall over there. It is one of 2 recipients here in Singapore who actually achieved a Michelin star. So I'm going to meet the chef. Hawker-chan! Hi! So this is the chef extraordinaire, Hawker-chan, and he's been cutting this for over 30 years, right?
Yeah.
30 tahun.
Yeah.
Wow.
The stall has become famous for serving the world's cheapest Michelin star meal.
We're a well-oiled machine here, but I'm feeling the pressure. So one sauce here.
One portion costs less than $2. But the wait can be up to 3 hours.
For the rice, which is boiling. That was pretty good.
所以自从米其林来到这个新加坡，我们成为hawker 里面都可以成为一星之后，我有听说过以后会有很多年轻人愿意加入的，因为除了自己做老板赚钱，而且还会成为名厨的所以说我相信他们一定会有一天会多出来的。
It's hoped the Star Award might mean more young people consider a career in the street markets. Hawker expert Dr. Tay explains how there are fears the tradition might die out.
Most of the hawkers, they don't want their kids to do what they're doing because it's hard work, it's hot, long hours. And if you sell any of the hawker food for more than $3 or $4, people will start to question. The $3 or $4. We have to change the perception of hawker food as being cheap.
Wow, so this is like a full one-woman operation, is it?
It's usually me in the morning, yeah.
Just you in the morning?
Just me in the morning. The places like this will actually encourage a little more like youngsters to actually start out a business in maybe a little bit better environment. It's not a traditional hawker center where it's more rowdy. Like I revamped my logo to suit this place because it's more like a hipster area.
It's still hot and hard work, but it's hoped these new, more contemporary surroundings will encourage the next generation of Singaporeans to keep creating some of the best street food in the world.
Henry there helping, hopefully not hindering, Hawker-chan to keep his Michelin star back in 2016. Well, do stay with us because coming up on the show, we jump on board a magical bus in Karachi.
I'll just say that there's just so much more to Karachi than we know.
And I go in search of London's disappearing red phone boxes. So don't go away.
Now, Karachi is Pakistan's biggest city, and almost 15 million people call it home. But it has had something of a reputation for not being the easiest or maybe safest place for tourists to explore. But back in 2017, Ben Zand went there to meet a group of people working to change that.
I want to get a taste of Karachi. And when you think of a tour, you usually think of a friendly tour guide, some foreigners, a casual stroll around the city. But in Karachi, it's much different. it is done on one of these things. This is the Super Savari Express.
In a city linked more with bombs and guns than tourist trips, the Super Savari seems a strange choice. But this is a unique kind of tour bus, created to change the image of Karachi not only locally, but also around the world. Its main aim, to help Karachi's population reconnect with their city, and help the rich meet the city's poorest members. In its early days, each tour would come with an armed guard, but as the situation has improved, it's now just this big, beautiful bus.
I love this bus, man. It's incredible.
Don't we all?
What's the history of it? I mean, you see them everywhere in Karachi.
Well, you know, the concept works along the lines of this actually being a representation of the brides of the guys who drive them.
Why do you think a city like Karachi needs something like this?
There has been a disconnect between educated classes in Karachi and the general population.
And do you do this because you think that Karachi is misrepresented and it has a reputation it doesn't deserve?
I'll just say that there's just so much more to Karachi than we know. There's something special about this mosque that I have to show you guys.
The tour takes visitors around the city in an attempt to show its diversity. You visit mosques, Hindu temples, churches, Karachi's version of the Big Ben, and then it's time for food.
Sorry. I'm gonna ruin your tea party. What is this? The guy said it's traditional Pakistani breakfast.
Yeah. So traditional Pakistani breakfast is essentially, so you get chai, and then you have, it's type of an omelette. Essentially, most things in Pakistan are made spicy. So it's the same thing with omelets.
I have noticed.
Spice them up.
My stomach noticed that a few days ago.
If you dip some of that in chai.
So you actually dip it in the tea?
Yeah.
I'm just ruining your tea.
Nah, it's all
just
good.
soggy pieces of dough in your tea.
Our next stop.
So this is Bliari, widely regarded as the most dangerous area of Karachi.
So here in Liari, there's only really one sport people care about, and that is football. There's over 175 registered clubs, and that's because these guys, like everyone else, absolutely love it. Anywhere you look, you see Man United tops, Real Madrid tops, and hopefully some Liverpool tops. And I'm here to find out a bit more about why that is the case.
This is our Liari Center, in Liari, a center of excellence, where we have approximately 100 kids that come across to train 4 or 5 times a week. We give them free football coaching. We give them life skills sessions on top of it.
All right, so I've been asked to have a game with these kids who look pretty good. Because I'm wearing a Liverpool top, everybody here thinks I play for Liverpool. So a huge crowd is gathered. So yeah, look forward to me embarrassing myself in front of everybody. Here we go.
After eyeing up the opposition, we began. Sand and heaters. It's not a good combination. Soon, though, we were losing by 2 goals.
Liverpool 1, Karachi United 3.
Me and my new friend Michelle realised it was our moment. And after generously being awarded a free kick, I curled it into the corner. Then, 2 penalties later, we had won the game. After celebrating with my team, adequately named Benjamin's Liverpool Warriors, I spoke to Michelle about football here.
You were a little bit nervous about playing because you're like the only girl here. Is this the first time you've played here?
It's the first time I've played here without any other girls. And if you were to look around, and there's a game going on there, there's an academy here. I think I'm the only female in this stadium right now. Sometimes we go into an area where the culture is just extremely male dominant and they don't want females to play. They're eager to play, they're keen to play, which is something very difficult in Pakistan, to get girls to get excited about sports. There are 100 boys who come to the academy here, there's maybe 35 girls who come, so that's about the ratio. But to me that's fantastic, because 2 years ago there was 0. And football is picked up in areas that have been otherwise neglected. These guys often have to come up with their own recreation, solving their own problems. And football is kind of, it's inherent to the game, solving your own problem.
Ooh.
Ben there on board what must be one of the world's most colourful tour buses back in 2017. Well, if you cast your mind back to a time when travel wasn't quite as difficult as it is right now, there was still the eternal dilemma, what to do with a lengthy airport layover. Well, we set Addy the challenge back in 2017. How much could he fit in to a 6-hour stopover in Rome?
So you find yourself stuck on a Rome layover here at Leonardo da Vinci Fiumicino Airport. Now this one is one of the largest in Italy and it's a central hub for its national airline. Unfortunately, Rome is ranked as one of the most delayed airports in the world. So you're probably going to find yourself with a little bit of time in your hands. So I've decided to make it a bit more interesting and set myself a challenge to see Rome in under 6 hours. Hello, Esther.
Hi, how are you? Nice to meet you.
Buongiorno. I want to see the Colosseum, the Circus Maximus, the Palatine Hill, the Mouth of Truth, and of course, the Trevi Fountain. My first proper stop here is to go and see the Circus Maximus. Older than the Colosseum and with a capacity of hundreds of thousands of people, it was at the heart of Rome's lavish and brutal public entertainment, the gladiators to you and me.
This was the place for the spectators, the excavations over there. The spectators sat all around.
And resting just above the site is the Palatine Hill, which is one of the most ancient parts of the city. Next stop is a little hidden gem. It's the Mouth of Truth.
If you are a liar and you put the hand inside of the mouth, your hand will be cut. Okay.
Every time I see the Trevi Fountain, it always takes my breath away because it's so beautiful. And I'd say this is definitely one of the most must-see monuments in Rome. One of the downsides of a tour like this is that there's no real time to stop and really enjoy the sights because of the tight schedule. But they give you a great taster of what's on offer. And who knows, maybe one day I'll be back to explore Rome at a more leisurely pace.
Addy there, cramming in the ancient Roman sites back in 2017. Well, to finish off the show this week, we're in my adopted hometown of London, famous, of course, for its bright red buses and, until relatively recently, its red phone boxes. But since the arrival of these things, fewer and fewer people have been using the public phones. So, back in 2019, I reported on a programme to remove those iconic red boxes from London's streets. After all, it's only tourists that miss them, right?
The red phone box is synonymous with London. When they were first introduced in the 1920s, they gave many poorer Londoners access to the phone for the very first time. And after countless appearances in films, TV shows and music videos, they became something of an icon, both here and around the world.
If it's London, it's the telephone, it's the red telephone box.
The first thing that came to my mind whenever I heard something about Britain was either the Queen or their red phone booth.
Although as more people got access to their own phone at home, the numbers of actual calls being made from them dropped.
Now, I can remember when I first came here 20 years ago, using a phone box was a really big event. It was like, I have arrived in London. And I probably took several dozen selfies in one of these things. But these days, it's clear it's just not being used very much. And frankly, isn't the nicest place to be. It smells not ideal either. Might get out of here.
Even though a lot of these phone boxes aren't in the best of shape now, there's a group of Londoners who still take pride in them and the postcard image they portray.
I think just because phone boxes are British icons, for them to look scruffy in the photos that are going all back around the world with tourists after their holiday, I didn't like that idea. So I thought, why not clean them up? It's only polite. Seeing one in a completely sorry state was almost like seeing an elderly relative in distress or something.
We like to help Emily because I think we think it's a worthy cause and we're loyal friends. It looks nice that they're all scrubbed up.
Emily and her band of volunteers regularly spend their spare time sprucing up phone boxes like these for sightseers. But it looks like even their valiant efforts might not be enough to save them.
They're difficult to keep clean and they're not very easy for people with disabilities to use, and we are obliged to have quite a high percentage of the payphones which can be used by people with disabilities.
So the question is, what's going to happen to the old red phone boxes we've all come to know and love? Some have been put up for sale and some are being offered to local communities to turn into things like public libraries. Others are already being rented out to businesses who see the beauty in keeping things small, like Fuad, who now repairs phones inside a phone box.
I'm not claustrophobic at all. If you work in an iconic place, you are iconic too.
Other businesses that have cropped up include cafes, coffee bars and souvenir shops, all crammed inside a square metre of floor space.
I think all the conversations these four walls must have overheard, declarations of love, cries of emergency or whispers of espionage, these walls have heard it all, every type of conversation, and I think it's sad to see them now empty.
Sadly, that's all we've got time for on this week's programme, but I hope we've given you enough inspiration to keep you going until we can all travel again. Coming up next week.
It's the turn of technology in the final part of our series, in which Addie looks at some of the big issues to shape travel as we get back out on the road.
So do join us then if you can. And in the meantime, you can catch up with more of our recent programmes on BBC iPlayer, and we're on social media, of course, in all the usual places. Until next time, from me and the Travel Show team, it's goodbye.